Hi, I'm Lance Henriksen. You're watching Brian Lomax's Movie Talk.
In 1984, New Line Cinema released their first in a long line of a series of horror films called A Nightmare on Elm Street. Written and directed by Wes Craven, this film was made for a paltry budget of under $2 million. Literally peanuts. The film became an absolute phenomenon, and New Line Cinema, who produced the film, became a major player in the Hollywood system. At that point, they weren't. They were a very small company, a very small distribution company working out of a poky little office, just a couple of people working there. And yeah, this film basically made them into the company that would eventually go on to make Lord of the Rings. For anyone who doesn't know the story for this, one, I have to ask, what rock have you been hiding under? But two, let me explain. A group of teenagers all start having the same dreams, nightmares in fact, of a burnt man who is hunting them down and trying to kill them with these knives on his fingers. Our main character, Nancy, played by Heather Langenkamp, decides to fight back. She decides to take a stand against this person in the nightmares and basically figure out who he is. A child murderer by the name of Freddy Krueger was killed by a whole load of parents. When she accidentally pulls something out of one of the nightmares, she realises she can bring Freddy into the real world. So, with that in mind, she attempts to do just that, in the hope that they will somehow be able to stop him. And my little rundown of the plot there may oversimplify things. It may sound like the plot for this is very simple indeed, but it's actually one of the best things about the film. It's a stroke of genius on Craven's part to make this nightmare figure of Freddy Krueger, to have someone who can literally get into your dreams and get to you that way. Up to this point, all the slasher films that we'd seen were all human people who kind of attacked you in the real world. They wore a mask and they usually had a knife or a machete or something. We had Norman Bates, we had Leatherface, we had Michael Myers, we had Jason Voorhees. It's a very kind of stale formula was starting to set in, I feel, and what A Nightmare on Elm Street did was really make the slasher genre quite fresh. The question is, does the film still hold up today? Well, I think this film is still a very good film, but it does have some issues, and I will get into those. But first of all, the positives. Extremely creative use of special effects, I must say. Like I say, the budget for this film was really, really low indeed. But some of the effects that they get away with here, some of the images they create, that they put on the screen, are really creative indeed, and sometimes quite horrific as well. Most notably, the death of Tina. Now, she's the character in the film who's kind of like the Janet Leigh character from Psycho. She's set up as the main character. I think of Drew Barrymore in Scream as well, which is something that Wes Craven obviously went on to direct later on in his career. But she's set up as this main character. You don't expect her to die. You're like, okay, here's our protagonist. This is the woman we're going to follow. So when she's killed, in quite a big way, it's quite a shock. But it's a really well done scene, really well choreographed. And the special effects that you see in this scene, again, like I say, they're not something you would expect to see from a film of this budget. It kind of leaves you asking, how did they do that? One thing I noticed about it this time around as well is that Freddy himself is actually in this film very little. He's not in much of the film's running time. So he is very much this nightmare figure who just pops up now and again, but his presence is felt very much so throughout the whole film. That helps to build tension, and it helps to build the mythos around this character of Freddy Krueger. I love the atmosphere that's created in the film as well. The conjunction of the music and the cinematography, they really work well together. Some really nice lighting, particularly when we're down in the boiler room, and even when we're out in the street at night. Just really creepy, well lit. And as I say, the music is really well played as well. Now, the composer for this actually did all the music himself. Again, this was a budget constraint. They decided, rather than hiring a whole orchestra, he would do it all himself, pretty much the way a lot of musicians do music today. Obviously back then it wasn't quite as common, but he recorded each of the instruments in his home by himself and kind of layered them up on each other. But I love this motif that appears throughout the film that comes from this little song, you know, the 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. That song that Wes Craven wrote himself. it's really creepy because it's like this nursery rhyme. It's like a children's nursery rhyme. So to hear that song kind of playing over and throughout the film as Freddy obviously does his business with these kids, it's creepy. It leaves a bit of a chill. From a writing standpoint, the character of Nancy is a really well written character. She's strong. If you look at the tradition of the women in slasher films, even someone like Laurie Strode in the first Halloween, they're not strong, and eventually they fight back because they've no choice. You know, you look at Laurie when she's trapped in the cupboard and she stabs Michael Myers with the coat hanger. She does that because she's trapped in a cage. She has no choice. Whereas Nancy in A Nightmare on Elm Street, she chooses to go back in the dream. She actually looks for a way to confront this guy. And I really like that about this film. I really like that this woman actually, she takes the offensive. She's the one who thinks the situation through, realises what she has to do, and goes and does it. She shows real strength as a character that we're not really used to seeing in the slasher genre, maybe even today, really. So that's the positives, but like I say, I do think there are some negatives. There's many things about this film that I don't think have dated particularly well, that maybe as I've gotten older, that it just doesn't quite gel with me as much. And the primary thing is the ending, really. I'm not so sure I'm sold on the ending. The character of Glenn, played by Johnny Depp, his first cinematic role, he dies quite brutally, and the way the film plays out at the end, you can kind of read it that actually his character never died at all, that it's all in Nancy's head, that it was all a dream. And the thing that kind of gives that away is that she has this moment where Freddy talks to her on the phone, where his tongue comes out of the phone, and up to that point in the film we never see Freddy kind of come into the real world. So when something like that is happening, you know that someone is dreaming. So that's all part of Nancy's dream. When Johnny Depp's character croaks it didn't really happen. That's the way I read it at any rate. But from that moment on, everything up to the end of the film, including the last moments of the film, is a dream. So we're kind of left in this limbo, really, that effectively Nancy never woke up. And now obviously we go back to her character in some of the sequels, and I can't remember if that is fully explained. We'll get there when I do the reviews for that. But it just, I don't know, it leaves me in a bit of a bum note. And the thing about the final scene as well, when Nancy comes out of the house and she gets into the car, is right off the bat, it feels like a dream. It has this really soft focus, really bright lighting. It has a very dreamlike quality to it immediately when she comes out that door, so you know she's dreaming. And there's so many clues there to it being a dream that it makes me question why, because up till that point in the film, whenever someone is in a dream-like state, nothing really gives it away, other than obviously like when weird stuff starts happening. You know, you see like Tina in the body bag, then you know she's dreaming. But the world around her, the world around Nancy as she's in the dream, still looks real. It still feels like the real world. So to suddenly change that aesthetic in those final moments seems like a bit of a bizarre creative choice to me, and maybe the wrong way to go. Someone that I really didn't like in this film as well is Ronnie Blakely as Nancy's mother. I did not like her performance at all. Physically, she's doing something rather strange with her body throughout. She has this way of kind of swaying her head all the time whenever she's talking, and it was really off-putting. I don't know what she was trying to do with that performance from a physical standpoint. Heather Langenkamp is suitable, I would say, in the role of Nancy. I guess she has a lot of the qualities that Craven was looking for. Someone who looks intelligent but looks like a girl next door kind of thing. But yeah, I think a dozen other actresses could have played this role. I don't think personally think that there's anything in particular that Heather Langenkamp brings to this that someone like, say, Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween didn't do a better job of. Myself, that's just my personal opinion. Even though we learn that most of the final act of the film is a dream, whilst you're actually watching it, unless you go, ah, yes, she's in a dream, it really comes off as quite stupid in many ways. There are things that characters do that just leave you scratching your head. Like when Nancy's dad tells this officer that if Nancy, you know, if you notice anything funny going on in the house where Nancy is, come and tell me straight away. And then we get this kind of little Home Alone type thing going on with Nancy and Freddy Krueger, in which she's setting off bombs, she's breaking glass, she's screaming out the window, and this guy is just stood there like, maybe I should go and tell her dad. And it's like he's taking forever to make this decision to go and tell her, and it's just like, it's dumb. And you know what? After the fact, when you realise it's a dream, you can say, yeah, you know, anything's allowed because it was a dream. But at that point in the film, they're not trying to convince us it is a dream. In fact, they're trying to convince us of the opposite. So to have this character act in this way, it's just a bit stupid. And also, here's a question. Why the hell would Nancy's mother keep that glove? They go down to the basement and her mother tells Nancy the story of Freddy Krueger, who he was, what he did, and more importantly, what she had done to him, along with all the other parents. And she's got the glove. She pulls the glove out from under her stove, whatever that thing is. And you just, I'm left asking why. Why would you do that? That is just weird behaviour. Why would you want any piece of this guy? Now, it really boggles my mind. This guy who has murdered children, has probably done other things to them as well. Children you know, and you've killed him, and you're going to take his glove, the very thing he used to kill those children, and you want it in your house? Makes no sense to me. Like, you know, I get they need that scene, they need to be able to tell Nancy what happened, but just tell her and do some flashbacks if you have to. But the fact that she's keeping that glove makes no sense to me whatsoever. Nightmare on Elm Street is still a really good film, don't get me wrong. I do have these niggles about it, but they're mostly to do with the final act. For me, the final act just doesn't hold up very well. I think all the setup and a lot of the stuff that happens throughout the film, it's really very good. It's really well done. And the scene in the school with the body bag still creeps me out. It was one of the scenes when I was a child, one of the first scenes I remember that just really scared me half to death. It doesn't scare me as much anymore, but it's still creepy. Just seeing Tina in that body bag being dragged around. Yeah, and like I say, Tina's death scene, all really very good. But as I say, the final act just kind of loses it a bit, I think. So that's why it doesn't quite get as high a mark as I would have once given this. I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5. So if you've seen Nightmare on Elm Street, please comment below, let me know what you thought about it, and tell me if you disagree with the niggles that I have about the film. Maybe you can persuade me to think otherwise. Until next time, thanks for watching.